it's there's a book called The Peter Principle. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. But the Peter Principle is basically we promote people to their highest level of incompetence. So we keep promoting them until they break. And that's usually where their team, their people who work for them are usually the kind of people who suffer with that, because it's exactly that phenomenon you've just discussed. We promote, and we find something they can't actually do, rather than looking at actually what are they really good at and how can we, because a really good technical manager is invaluable to an organization. They're not invaluable, but they may not be the best person to lead a team within that organization.
You're listening to the Focus on Customer Experience podcast. Benjamin Del Grosso gives you the ins and outs of one of the most underlooked aspects in business today. Improve your customer service and watch your business skyrocket. 2, 1. Now, here's your host, Benjamin Del Grosso.
Hello and welcome to the show. Today we have Craig Smith. He's with the Big Picture People. Put your people in the picture. We create unique visual communication tools that share the big picture of your organization with your people. Employees learn how their role and behavior delivers your key strategic priorities. The result is engaged and aligned colleagues who contribute more. So Craig, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ben. Nice to meet you. How are you doing?
Doing well. So how did you get to creating this business, the Big Picture People?
Well, I'd like to say I created it. I actually bought it off someone else, but yeah, but
great minds think alike.
Exactly. No, but it was a bit like the Remington story, if you're familiar with it. I kind of work with them, Big Picture People. I used to work in an American-owned multinational. We bought they were called Big Picture Learning at the time, but we bought them in to do some work for us. I loved what they did. I then left that company and started my own another business, but I kept in touch with them, and I did some associate work, guys, as is the kind of way we work in in this kind of particular world that I operate in, consultancy, that sort of thing. And the opportunity came about from the guy who owned the business. He said, look, he was retiring, and he was looking for someone to maybe take the business on. He looked at all ways of potentially doing that. And I said, look, it's like the Remington story. I love it so much. I'd like to buy it off you. So yeah, that was what happened. So I bought the business, but again, so I it's not just a kind of like, kind of a off the shelf purchase. I did have a kind of an emotional attachment with it. So that's how it happened. And as I said, I used these guys when I was in my corporate life, and I never found a better way of engaging people than this particular approach. So, and that's how I got involved.
Nice. So, we're obviously going to talk about, organizational culture, and a lot of people don't realize just how much culture plays a big part of their business. A lot of people just think like, he's my top seller, he's my top whatever. He doesn't really buy into everything, but if we lost him, we would lose so much sales. And they don't realize that person's negativity and really affects the whole culture. And so kind of why is it why do so many large organizations have disengaged employees?
It's a great question. I think it's often I often think that there's one thing which is almost kind of biological, which may sound a strange thing to say, but I do think that when you put human beings into groups that become almost, beyond their critical mass, like I always use the analogy of, these heavy elements that they use for, radioactive elements. They get to a point where the nucleus of that element is so big that it becomes unstable and starts to sort of fall apart, which is kind of why they become radioactive. I think groups of people are a little bit like that when you put large groups of people together, they really do test some of those bonds that exist between smaller groups of people, which is kind of how we're kind of hardwired to work. So I do think organizations do struggle with that, in that when they get to that kind of critical mass, that it's hard to keep people connected. It's hard to keep people together. But going back to I guess the premise of your question, which is that often they neglect it. They don't think about it as much. there's a great quote. I can't remember the name of the guy who came up with the quote, but I use it. I should know it because I use it quite a lot myself, which is um, the hard stuff's the easy stuff, the soft stuff's the hard stuff. And let me explain what that means. By what he's saying there is the hard stuff, as in, machines, IT equipment, buildings, all of the kind of tangible stuff. That's really easy to manage because it's not got thoughts, feelings, emotions. It kind of just does what you put it with there and it stays there. The hard stuff is the soft stuff, and that's people. That's the software within your organization. That's the people. That's all of those relationships that you're talking about. And that's the thing that managers typically shy away from because it's messy. People are unpredictable. They do unpredictable things. They don't always, kind of follow the rules that you want them to. So I do think that organizations sometimes kind of duck it because they just don't know how to do it very well, and also it frightens them. And managers, you see this on individual managers, they're often promoted on kind of technical ability and not necessarily on how good they are with people. That becomes a secondary consideration. We've probably all been there, worked for a manager who kind of thought, like, brain the size of a planet, but kind of hopeless with people. And that's a kind of dramatic far end of the spectrum, but there are quite a few people I think who just don't know how to lead. That and that's a fundamental issue I think for a lot of organizations all over the world. So that's why I think culture often is the poor relation when it comes to where we focus our attention in terms of leading and managing big organizations.
Yeah, I find a lot of what happens is I've worked so many jobs where you're the top salesperson. You're now the manager.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
But the thing is they're so good at sales that they go into this manager role and then they just keep selling. And
they do.
These people aren't being led.
No.
And it's like they don't know how to transition from you're the salesman to now have to teach them to do what you were doing.
Exactly.
Plus lead, motivate, and push them, right? And hold them accountable, obviously, right? Like all those kinds of fun things, and make sure that whatever culture the company has put forward, you also need to sustain that. And a lot of these people get put in these positions they're not comfortable in. They weren't trained, they weren't mentored to get ready to go into that position.
Most definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And
it's there's a book called The Peter Principle. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. But the Peter Principle is basically we promote people to their highest level of incompetence. So we keep promoting them until they break. And that's usually where their team, the people who work for them, are usually the kind of people who suffer with that, because it's exactly that phenomenon you've just discussed. We promote, and we find something they can't actually do, rather than looking at actually what are they really good at and how can we, because a really good technical manager is invaluable to an organization. They're not invaluable, but they may not be the best person to lead a team within that organization, because as you say, you need to be able to recognize that when I move from being an individual contributor to being a leader, I don't do the job anymore, and I need to let go of loads of stuff and get over myself and actually accept that a lot of people might do things very differently to how I used to do it, and that might be better than the way I used to do it, and people struggle with that.
Yeah, no, I see that like quite often, and I've seen it for so many years. Way too many organizations, they have the top sales guy running the store, and all the employees hate that person now because they went from being the salesman that provided to them to now being their leader and not knowing how to manage the people.
Most definitely.
When we're talking about culture, it completely destroys your culture. And it's funny because somebody who was once loved in another position is now hated because they don't know how to do how to be a leader. And I find a lot of companies are really failing their employees in terms of having internal trainings and educating them. Is this kind of like where like a company like yours comes in and like trains these people on how to share their mission, vision, and values, or how to?
There's a little bit of that. Yeah. I mean, essentially what we do is, and I'll use another analogy, is that if you imagine for a lot of organizations, it's a bit like we bought a jigsaw puzzle, but it came without a lid, and we don't know how it all fits together. So that's the analogy we use quite a lot. So we've got all these pieces, they're scattered all over the table. You've got Joe in that department, and Chris in this department, and Alice in this department. They've all got their own little piece of the jigsaw, but no one really knows where their pieces fit together. So what we do is we'll go in working with not just on one version of the story. We'll work with the leadership team, we'll talk to the employees as well, and we'll create the lid of that jigsaw box, so everybody kind of gets to know where all of the things fit together. And that can be quite literal. It can be like our processes and our systems, or it can be quite metaphorical as well, in that our organization's a bit like a kind of a catamaran sailing across the ocean. We can move between those very kind of creative versus very literal ways of doing that. But what that means is that we've then got something that allows people to sort of, it's like we call them learning maps, and the analogy of the map rings true, which is if you're going to go on a journey, you kind of need to know where you're going and what the things on the way, and how that looks and how it's going to feel and what some of the challenges are. And so we use them, we create those learning maps, those big pictures. And then what we do is we train their managers to be able to sit down with their team and say, this is our story. And with it, not just look at it and make your own mind up, but we've got some little conversation starters and have a look at this bit. How does this feel like our business? Or what does it feel like when we're in this position, maybe when we're in this catamaran and we've got a big wave just about to break over us, which might be change, it might be redundancies, it might be whatever. How does that feel to be in the boat of that situation, and how can we help ourselves feel safer? Or how can we make sure we've got the life jackets on, that sort of thing. And getting the managers to sort of talk to their people and actually be honest with them about some of the problems we've got as a business, some of the challenges we've got. Maybe customers don't like us, or we've got regulators breathing down our necks all the time. For a lot of people, they've never really understood that, or no one's really explained it to them. We kind of assume everybody knows that, but often they don't. And so by helping them kind of almost think a little bit like we do as business owners or leaders in the business, we're not kind of saying to them, you need to make all the decisions, but we're saying these are some of the issues we have to face when we're trying to make decisions. So it's not about, we want you to feel as though we've got a really hard job and you haven't. It's about a bit of empathy and understanding and respect across the organization. So that plays into it. But you're right, it's really important, because one of the challenges we sometimes face is that we create all of this stuff, and managers just haven't got the ability to be able to sit down with a group of people and talk to them, which you'd kind of think is a fairly fundamental skill for anybody who's a line manager. But that's sometimes, back to where we said before, they've been promoted on a different set of skills, and that isn't something that they and sometimes we have to then kind of find people in the organization who are good at that and get them to do it for them. So yeah, it's not so much training. But there is a learning, I think learning is the key part of this. But it's about learning about what we do, why we do it, some of the challenges we're facing, and ultimately, how we need to treat each other, and that whole culture piece again.
Yeah. So the networking group I'm in, they like to tell us to begin with the end in mind. Right. So that's one of the big things they like talking to us about.
Yeah.
And the big thing is like you were talking about the puzzle, but you have no top. So you don't know what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
So you're like flying blindly. So it's like I had like over the last couple of weeks, I've been like looking at my vision statement, and I'm like, so that's great. I have this vision and I want to accomplish it by 2027, but I don't have any, like, there's no design of how I'm even going to do it by 2027. So I'm literally, it's like I've said, hey, I want to go drive to here, but I actually don't have a map. I'm not using Google Maps on my phone. I don't have a map rolled out. I'm just going to hop on the road and maybe I'll get there.
Yeah.
Maybe there'll be a sign. Right.
But I don't think that's a bad thing, Ben. I think, I'd much rather be in a vehicle where we kind of we know where we're heading to, but we're not really sure how we're going to get there. And because we don't know what we don't know what the weather conditions are like. You're in BC. Ironically, it's just started snowing here for the first time this year in the UK. But you may hit a blizzard. You might have to take a diversion. You might hit a snowdrift. You might hit there might be a road that's closed for whatever reason. but we're going to get there. We kind of know where we're going. I'd rather be in a car that's like that than somewhere that we've got this journey mapped out, but we don't really know where we're going or why we're going there. We were just sort of driving for the sake of it on this road, on this route that we've got, which is a lot of organizations have the route mapped out to the infinite level of detail in so much as like the millimeter, but nobody really knows what's at the end of the road. Well, I don't know. But we're on this journey. So I think in your position, I'd rather be in your position because, you know, I use this analogy quite a lot, you know, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but it sounds like a good story. So I'll tell it to you. But someone once told me that a lot of airlines, you know, a plane, when it's on a flight plan, when it's flying from, I don't know, say Vancouver to Montreal or whatever, about 90% of the time it's not actually on its prescribed, you know, it's within the corridor of where it needs to be, but it will, you know, the pilot will go up if he or she needs to get over some turbulence or whatever, but they know where they're going. So I think a lot of organizations need to adopt that approach, which is, you know, it's not like we're going completely the opposite direction, but we know where we're heading to, and we'll deviate around the things we need to deviate around. And I think too many organizations are too rigid, and that's what we do in our kind of big pictures. We depict those bumps in the road, those kind of unforeseen circumstances, and help people recognize that a lot of business is actually, we need to think on our feet. As long as we know where we're going and what we're trying to achieve, we'll get there, but we might have to do it in different ways because, you know, pandemics, financial, you know, crises occur, oil prices go through the roof. We don't, you know, we can't forecast that, and we're going to have to adapt, but we're still heading to where we said we were going to head to. I think that's a really important thing that organizations need to do, and which is why I wouldn't worry if I was you. You'll find a way of getting where you wanted to get to. If the pull is strong enough, you'll get there.
Yeah, no, like there is positives and negatives, right? Like maybe I don't accomplish my vision by 2027 and maybe I accomplish it by 2030 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that stuff happens. So I still have, because I know some people will literally have a whole roadmap and it's going to happen by month 3, month 6, month 12. And then when they don't hit those goals, they get discouraged and then they completely fall off the whole journey or whatever, right?
Well, they
and then
hit.
That's that's counterproductive too, as well, to mapping.
It can be, yeah. I think you've got to get that balance right. I'm not advocating that, you know, you just kind of like, I'm just going to kind of jump in the car and drive generally north. Yeah, you know, it's like I've got my route mapped out, but you know, it's, you know, I mean, yeah, I know you're dash cams, but most sat navs now are dynamic, aren't they? They'll start with a route, and then if you know it picks up there's a blockage or there's a road closure or a crash, it'll divert you around it. It's dynamic route finding, and I think that's what we need to do with strategy. And too often it's like, no, we said we were going to go down that road, yeah, but there's a kind of, you know, it's closed. Well, no, we said we were going to go down that road, we're still going to head down it, and then you hit a car, you know, a massive traffic jam, and you spend an hour there and you could have got there a lot quicker. So I think that's the sort of, you know, it's not about not having a plan, but it's kind of having a plan but holding that plan loosely and being willing to be flexible. And organizations need to, you know, help their people understand that, because often I think they, you know, they almost say to them, you know, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to, and then they're locked in, and they perceive that if we backtrack on that, our people are going to think we're not, you know, we're not doing what we said we were going to do. Well, hang on, we're still heading to where we wanted to head to, but we've hit some unforeseen circumstances. So yeah, I think that definitely feeds into, you know, this kind of whole narrative thing. So and this building the right kind of culture and the right kind of frame of mind as well.
So I'm not sure if we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what are the most effective ways that organizations can share their vision, values, and strategies with their employees?
Well, I'm biased, but I do think our approach works really well, because again, you know, it goes back to, for me, a vision needs to be visual. You know, how often do you kind of say to put someone, or you know, from an organizational perspective, and this happens to us, you know, so, you know, show us your vision, and, you know, quite understandably, it's just a bunch of words on a piece of paper. But for me, a vision needs to be visual. You know, if we've got to say we want to be the best, or we want to be number one, or we want to, you know, kind of transform the world, and, you know, and people often conflate vision, mission, all of these different terms together. I think you've got to kind of show people what it's going to look like. At least create a mental picture of that, or actually illustrate what that's going to look like. What does those sunlit uplands look like? So I think I think that's one of the challenges, is that often it's very wordy, and again, anybody who's listening to this, and I know you've been involved with this, Ben, is, the kind of, we're going to go on a away day with the exec team and we're going to write the vision, and it's like, you spend a day wordsmithing. There's a great video by a guy called Dan, I think it's not Dan Pink. I'll dig it out for you. Anyway, there's a great how to create a mission statement that sucks. If you type it into Google, or into YouTube, and it's a great video of basically how we take a kind of bunch of words that actually do mean something. Usually this is what happens with these kind of away days, and then we kind of wordsmith it into something that's just completely vanilla, completely kind of, tries to appeal to everybody in such a way that it means nothing, and takes all of the kind of emotion out of it. So I do think, regardless of whether you're going to use an approach like ours, if you're going to communicate your vision, it needs to have some emotion. It needs to have something. It needs to create a mental picture at very least, if not be a picture. And it needs to help people to kind of understand how good that's going to be when we get there. Not just for you, the bosses and the shareholders, but for me as an employee or a stakeholder within your organization as well. I think so. And that can be done, typically that's done through a bunch of PowerPoint slides. I'm not knocking PowerPoint or other slide generation software exists, but often it needs to be a conversation as well. It needs to be something that we actually involve people in a conversation about, rather than just telling them that's our vision and you need to help us implement it. They need to kind of socialize it and discuss it so they can actually internalize it as well.
Yeah, no, that's very good. That's very good. So, I mean, obviously we're talking about vision, values, and we talk about strategies and sharing that information with the employees. And, I just, and we're talking about bad mission statements. And I'm not going to deny, I think I've written my mission statement, I don't know, 20 different times. And every time I think I got a good one, it's like, I don't know. Now I've just gone to like something very simple, we help drivers get video evidence. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Why not?
It's
Why
so
not?
simple.
Why keep it simple? Yeah.
It's every email communication to clients. And I used to have like we help improve people's lives by blah, blah, blah. And I had like this big thing, and I'm like, I don't know, it's so wordy. It's just, sometimes people overthink their mission statement.
Yeah.
Right.
And, drilling that back to a simple, even, and I think that's a great mission, vision statement, is that, we help you keep your license. We help you get the money for your car if it's damaged in an incident that wasn't your fault. It's all of that kind of emotional reasons why people want something like the stuff that you guys make. And I think often, like you say, you could sort of, we provide the highest technology, best resolution video cameras for cars. Great, but why would I want one? Whereas your kind of mission statement, vision statement answers, well, it's the emotional desire of why I want one of those things, which is I've got the evidence, and the evidence helps me if I'm in a situation where something happens and it wasn't my fault, or even if it was my fault, I can prove how much it was my fault and how much it was the other person's fault.
Yeah, you've dealt with a lot of valued clients. I'm just looking at your website here, like there's a lot of big companies like McDonald's and Shell and Virgin and Carlsberg, so maybe had a few beers or whatever, or but Rolls-Royce. So you guys have a lot of companies that you've helped help grow your company. Is this something that like typically they reach out to you? Is this something where you reach out to them? How is it that you have grown your company to get these kind of clients?
And I'm always kind of massively grateful of the kind of clients that you just mentioned there, and I think we do punch above our weight. We're a small business working with some massive companies, so typically how we get a lot of our clients is through a lot of it is through word of mouth and referral. So we it goes back to the days, the sort of multinational days I talked about earlier. We had a whole bunch of people. It's one of those things, we were at the right place at the right time. A lot of those people who we work with in that kind of in that organization and also associated with it went on to move to a lot of these different organizations in some sort of shape or form, and they took us with us. And as that's kind of propagated, that's kind of been that that viral, I have to be careful using viral marketing, because I don't know whether people still talk about it, because obviously what happened 2 years ago, but the whole, it is that kind of spreading of the news. People see it, people show it to their friends, say, hey, we use these guys. And also we developed a bit of a reputation, a very positive reputation for enhancing people's career prospects, to put it bluntly, in that we had a lot of people who worked with us because what we did kind of was quite transformational for the organization, and people were kind of amazed by the results that we got. They then, whenever they went somewhere else and they wanted to make a quick impact, we'll get these guys, get the big picture guys in again, and I can have that say. So we became almost a bit of a kind of a go-to. I want to make an impact quickly, and here can you come in and work with me again? So that's how we managed to, I could trace the family tree back of all those organizations you mentioned to one or two organizations we worked with right back in the early days. I'm saying we, as this was the guy who originally set the company up, where that kind of that DNA kind of spread out from. So all of those, there's a sort of family tree going back to, well, it was so and so who worked with us when we were here, and they took us to such and such. So yeah, I mean, that's a dream for a lot of organizations. We do, having said that, we do cold, not cold selling. We don't, don't cold calling, but we do get people who find us, are interested in what we do. But I think, given the nature of what we do, in quite niche and quite difficult for people to get their head around, I'm sure the people listening to this show who probably still think I have no idea what he does, but check the website out. But yeah, it's still a case of we often find it's people who've worked with us before who kind of get it, who often it's easier for us to sell to work with, because they've used it before, and they do a better job internally of getting the support they need. Because the kind of work that we do, you're looking at typically on average about 5 or 6 people who it's not one decision maker. There's 5 or 6 people who need to kind of tick the box and say, yeah, that's what we want to do. So that can mean we have like really long sales time cycles of sometimes up to a year before an old client's ready to make a decision on something, which can be frustrating, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Well, so we're talking about, because this is the Focus on Customer Experience show.
Yeah.
And typically with me, I get lots of referrals as well from prior clients. Like, even I just seen a client the other day, and she said, every time I'm in a Facebook group and someone talks about dash cams, I'm always telling them about you because it was such a great experience with you. And that's a big thing. If that's what you're getting is a referrals, that's the old way of doing things. And if you're still, and it's still, the thing is, there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually the best formula out there, because it costs
absolutely.
so much money to get. I know I gotta get so much. It costs so much money to retain customers. But if you already have a customer and you just take care of them, they will continuously tell people over and over and over again how great the experience was.
That was an epiphany for us a year or so ago, which was, we were spending a lot of time on kind of selling to people who didn't know us, and that wasn't because we were, and partly that was the kind of recovering from the pandemic, but there was the realization that actually, what we need to do for our marketing efforts is to actually just build and sustain the relationships we've already got with the people who already know us. That's far more viable than kind of trying to find people who've never worked with us before, which, again, we do get people who do that, but it's not. It's for us, it was that kind of like, it was all the kind of vanity that you have with loads of people visiting your website and all that stuff, which is great, but it's actually just building and finding ways to keep connected with the people who already know you and being relevant to them, I guess.
So, Craig, I mean, I know we got to wrap up here. So how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so easiest way, go to the website. So we're a UK company, so our web address is www.thebigpicturepeople.co.uk, and I've also got a podcast as well, which I know you're familiar with, which you can find. There's a short URL for that, which is engagingic.com. So engaging IC, all one word. IC is internal communications, which is our kind of thing that we podcast about. But yeah, that's the easiest way. Or find me on LinkedIn, Craig Smith, Big Picture People. You'll find me there. I've got a big network on LinkedIn, and happy to talk to people, share ideas. I'm not a kind of pushy salesperson. I like to meet people and talk to different people like you, and find out what they're up to. I'm curious by by nature. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot for coming on and sharing your knowledge today.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Ben, and all the best for 2023, and I hope everything's well with you.
Thank you.